While the Indiana Fever were locked behind closed doors on Monday, 2 hours deep into a team meeting that was never supposed to go public, the Atlanta Dream were 600 miles south, watching, waiting, and probably smiling. Because the team that humiliated them in September, the team that walked into their building and ripped away a playoff series they had no business losing, is coming apart. And Thursday night, Atlanta gets to walk into Gainbridge Fieldhouse and collect what they believe they're owed. This isn't just another early season WNBA game. This is a debt being called in. This is 8 months of preparation meeting 1 week of chaos. And if you think Indiana's internal meltdown doesn't matter against a team as disciplined and dangerous as Atlanta, you haven't been paying attention to what Carl Smesko has been quietly building in Georgia. But before we get into what Thursday looks like, we need to go back to where this story actually started, because Atlanta hasn't forgotten a single second of it, and understanding why tells you everything about what's coming. 30 wins, the 3 seed, a roster that had earned its place as a genuine contender. On paper, last September, Atlanta was the better team. Everyone knew it. They'd had the better regular season, the better defensive structure, the cleaner identity. They took the opener of that first-round series like it was expected, because honestly, it kind of was. Then it slipped. Indiana stole Game 2, quietly, almost without warning, and then the Fever walked into Atlanta for the deciding game and did something that should have been impossible. They won 87-85 after trailing by 7 at the half, after Atlanta had every reason to believe the series was theirs to close, and the Dream watched it happen in their own building. But here's what made it sting in a way that doesn't fade over a regular offseason. The team that beat them wasn't Hall. Caitlin Clark, the player who had defined Indiana's entire identity, the reason the Fever had become the most watched team in the league, had been ruled out for the rest of the season weeks earlier. She didn't play a single minute of that series, not one. A 30-win number 3 seed with a full roster lost to a hobbled 6 seed running on fumes and fight without its best player on the floor. Jordan Canada walked off that court and made a promise, said they'd be back, said it like someone who meant it in the way athletes rarely do when the cameras are still rolling. 8 months later, the promise is being kept, and this time, Clark is playing. That context matters more than people are giving it credit for. This isn't Atlanta coming in with a chip on their shoulder. They're coming in with a blueprint, a grudge, and 8 months of obsessive preparation aimed at exactly this moment. To understand why Thursday is so dangerous for Indiana, you have to understand what Atlanta actually is. Because this isn't a team that got lucky last year and held on. This is a roster that was engineered deliberately and meticulously to make scoring nights miserable. Start with Alicia Gray, 4th in MVP voting last season, first team All-WNBA, a player who opened 2025 like someone who hadn't gotten enough recognition and was determined to fix that personally. She's already dropped 26 points in a single game this year. She is not a complimentary piece. She's a weapon, and she plays like one every single night. Then there's Rhyne Howard, the number 1 overall pick, an all-star, one of the most physically imposing perimeter defenders in the entire league. Howard doesn't just guard scorers, she makes their nights genuinely unpleasant. She's physical, she's smart, and she has zero hesitation getting into a star player's space and staying there. She's done it to Caitlin Clark before. She'll do it again Thursday, and she'll have an entire defensive scheme backing her up. That scheme belongs to Carl Smesko, and if you're an Indiana fan and you haven't looked closely at Atlanta's defensive numbers last season, you probably should before Thursday night, because what you'll find isn't encouraging. Atlanta's defense ranked 2nd in the entire WNBA last year, 2nd, behind only the Minnesota Lynx, who won the championship. They led the league in defensive rebounding. They gave up the fewest points off turnovers in the entire league. They allowed the fewest points in transition of any team in the WNBA. This is not a defense that makes small mistakes and hopes to outscore you. This is a defense that suffocates you methodically, takes away your rhythm, and makes you earn every single point from the opening tip.
Dan Padover, Atlanta's general manager, won Executive of the Year for assembling this group. That's not an accident. That's a reward for deliberately constructing a machine designed to take apart exactly the kind of high-scoring, fast-paced offense that Indiana runs. And that machine is walking into Gainbridge on Thursday night, fully rested and personally motivated to face a team that's currently running one defensive coverage because they haven't been able to execute the others. Let that land for a second. 1. Indiana entered this season with real expectations. Not the kind of expectations born from hype alone, but the kind built on genuine playoff experience, a healthy Caitlin Clark, and the belief that last year's playoff run, incomplete as it was, proved this team could compete when it mattered. The Fever had reason for optimism. Then the season started. 4 wins and 4 losses through 8 games. 2 straight defeats on a Western road trip that exposed problems the team clearly wasn't prepared to admit publicly. First, a 2-point heartbreaker at Golden State, the kind of loss you can rationalize, tell yourself you were right there, it was just a couple of possessions. Then, Portland, an 18-point blowout that was effectively over by the third quarter. Not close, not a game decided by late-game execution. A game where one team was clearly better for 30 minutes and the other had no answer for it. And then, Monday happened. The Fever locked the doors. Coaches first, then it turned into a players-only session. 2 hours. That's not a quick reset conversation. That's not a brief film session with some honest words at the end. 2 hours behind closed doors, 8 games into the season, is a team genuinely trying to figure out what's wrong and whether it can be fixed before things get worse. Sophie Cunningham is the one who let it slip to reporters, said the meeting happened, said it started with the coaches, said the players took it over after Portland. Her exact words didn't leave much room for comfortable interpretation. "That's not it," she said. "We can't be playing like that. We're too good." That's a frustrated player speaking, not a diplomat managing a narrative. She meant every word. The part that almost made it darkly funny was Kelsey Mitchell. When the press started asking her about the meeting, she didn't immediately go into damage control mode. She looked confused, asked how they even knew about it. Her first instinct wasn't to spin it, it was genuine surprise that the room had leaked at all. When your stars are caught off guard by the fact that the world found out about your emergency sit-down, it tells you something about how rattled the environment really is. 2 hours, 8 games in. The house isn't on fire next week. Right now, in early June, with 60-plus games still to play, the smoke is already visible from the outside. Here is the detail that changes the entire complexion of Thursday's game, and it came out of that same meeting. Sophie Cunningham didn't just confirm the meeting happened, she confirmed something far more alarming for anyone who cares about Indiana's chances against a defense as sophisticated as Atlanta's. Indiana is currently running exactly 1 defensive coverage. 1, not 2, not a rotation of schemes depending on the opponent's strengths. 1 look, because they can't execute the others yet. Sophie Cunningham put it plainly. A year ago, this team had something like 10 different coverages in the playbook, 10 ways to adjust, to respond, to take something away from whatever the other team was trying to do. Right now, in 2025, they have 1, and they're hosting the second-ranked defense in the WNBA. A team's entire offensive system is built around finding mismatches, exploiting rotations, and punishing the exact kind of structural predictability that comes with having a single defensive look. To be clear about something, Indiana's offense is not the problem. They're one of the highest-scoring teams in the league. The Fever can put points on the board. The breakdown is entirely defensive, which is precisely where Atlanta does its damage. It's almost a kind of cruel kind of irony. The team that's thriving offensively is completely exposed on the end of the floor where their opponent is most lethal. Think about what Smesko's staff is going to do with that information, because they absolutely have it. Every coaching staff in the league talks, film exists.
when Atlanta scouts have spent the week breaking down Indiana's defensive tendencies and they realize there's one repeating look showing up every possession, they're not going to politely pretend they didn't notice. They're going to build Thursday's game plan around.
You can't tell this story without talking about Caitlin Clark. Not because she's the most famous player on the floor Thursday, though she is, but because she's sitting in the middle of a situation that has no clean exit for her, no matter what happens. Go back to Portland. There was a moment on the sideline between Clark and head coach Stephanie White, a competitive flashpoint, the kind of visible friction between a superstar and her coach that the sports media absolutely cannot leave alone. It became a national conversation over the weekend, and instead of spending the days before a massive game against the league's best Eastern Conference team focused entirely on Atlanta's defensive tendencies and how to attack Howard and Gray, Clark spent the week doing damage control, telling the room she rides for her coach, trying to smooth something over publicly that should have stayed internal, reassuring everyone that the relationship is fine while the cameras kept hunting for cracks in it. So she walks into Thursday carrying that weight in addition to everything else. And waiting for her on the other side is Rhyne Howard, who has made a habit of making Clark's nights physically uncomfortable. Howard doesn't play Clark with reverence. She doesn't adjust her approach because of the star power on the other end. She bodies her, she fouls her, she climbs directly into Clark's airspace and dares her to shoot over it. The last time these two shared a floor, Howard was relentless, and she'll have a full defensive scheme behind her Thursday to make Clark's life even more difficult. Here's the bind that Clark is actually standing in, and it's worth sitting with because it's genuinely uncomfortable. If she plays brilliantly Thursday, if she carries Indiana to a win on national television with 30 points and 10 assists, she papers over a structural team problem that the front office still hasn't addressed. The underlying issues don't get fixed, the locker room tension doesn't resolve, the defensive coverage limitation doesn't go away. It just gets masked by her individual brilliance for one more week until the problem surfaces somewhere else. But if she struggles, if Atlanta's defense does what Atlanta's defense is designed to do and limits her impact, then she loses to the best team in the East in front of a national audience while the sport watches to see whether everything that came out this week was the beginning of something worse. There is no clean version of Thursday for Caitlin Clark. She's either fixing a symptom or absorbing a loss, and neither outcome actually solves what's broken. Give the veterans credit for at least not pretending everything is fine, because the honest thing about this Indiana Fever situation is that the people closest to it aren't hiding from it the way franchises in trouble usually do, and no one has been more honest about it than Kelsey Mitchell. Mitchell is having the best stretch of her career right now. She's putting up better than 20 points a night, playing with a confidence and efficiency that makes her one of the more dangerous secondary scorers in the league. On pure basketball terms, she's doing her job at an elite level. So when Kelsey Mitchell speaks about the state of this team, it carries weight precisely because she's not a player who's struggling and searching for excuses. She's thriving, and she's still worried. When the meeting became public and the questions started coming, Mitchell didn't reach for comfortable answers. What she said was, "Hard times make you, or hard times can break you, and hopefully it don't break us." Read that again slowly because it's remarkable in what it reveals. That's not bulletin board material or motivational framing. That's a leader on a team with genuine championship aspirations in the first week of June, openly wondering out loud whether the thing that's happening to this locker room is survivable. She didn't say, "We've faced adversity before and we're better for it." She said, "Hopefully," as in she doesn't know. Then she went further. She said the team's culture is being actively tested right now to see if they're actually who they claim to be coming into the season. That's a quiet confession wrapped in honest language, and it deserves to be treated like the significant thing it is. A title contender's key veteran is publicly unsure in early June whether the identity they built their whole season around is real or just marketing. That's a flare shot into the sky, and Atlanta, 600 miles south, has been watching that sky all week. People keep framing Thursday as a test for Indiana, which it absolutely is, but they're underselling what.
The question Thursday isn't really about basketball matchups or roster construction or who has the better individual players. It's simpler and harder than that. Can a team still arguing about who it is beat the best team in the East on national television? Can Caitlin Clark hold together something that is visibly fraying at the edges through force of individual will? Can Kelsey Mitchell's hope that this doesn't break them survive contact with a team that would very much like to be the thing that breaks them? Atlanta walked off a floor in September and promised they'd be back. Thursday night at 7 at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on national television, they make good on that promise. The Dream have one job: win a basketball game. Indiana has to win a basketball game and keep a fracturing locker room from splitting open in front of the entire country at the same time. One of those jobs is a great deal heavier than the other, and the team carrying the lighter load has been waiting 8 months to remind Indiana exactly how that weight feels. The rematch is here. The question is whether Indiana is ready for it. And based on everything we've seen this week, Atlanta is betting they're not.
After the September loss, Smeško had a choice. Take the first-round exit as a painful but instructive learning experience, maybe make some changes, refresh the roster, rebuild towards something different. That's what most front offices do when a favored team goes home in the first round. You shake it up, you tell yourself it was a fluke, and then quietly change enough things that it doesn't feel like you're just running it back with the same group that failed. Smeško didn't do that. He refused to blow it up. He went into a brutal, compressed free agency window, fought for every dollar, and re-signed Alicia Gray. He brought Ryan Howard back. He kept the core together. He held on to the group that lost and told anyone who would listen that he wanted to run it back with the same people, the same identity, the same vision. You don't make that call unless something is eating at you. You don't pay to keep a group together after a first-round upset unless that upset is the specific thing keeping you awake in the offseason. Dan Padover, who won Executive of the Year for his work, went along with that vision. They spent real money in a league where spending real money is never a casual decision. They made it happen because the group that lost believed, collectively, that they